I don't know where I am. I must find Pinto. Welcome to Finding Pinto, the surprising story of a forgotten explorer, a misidentified island, and a centuries-old geographic mix-up indeed. Our journey begins in the waters around Batanes, Philippines, but ends with a challenge to long-held academic assumptions when they exhibit the Dory disorder. They are not executing academic rigor in any sense. In 1883, Fernão Lopes de Castanheda's Historia do Descobrimento recounts that after explorer Fernão Mendes Pinto was in Canton, he learned of a massive wealthy land to the, what's that word? Southeast. A place called Lequios, rich in gold, silver, silks, and porcelain. Do we know where Southeast is? A lot of PhDs don't seem to. This place, referred to as Lequios, was not Ryukyu, as commonly believed only in recent times, not the original record, which never says that, but something far more intriguing. Key point: Lequios is southeast of Canton, aligning with the Philippines, those latitudes from 4 to 22 degrees. Okay, it's 22 degrees. Not Ryukyu, which starts at 24 degrees. Now we're talking very basic cartography here, especially since Canton is at 23 degrees, right in between. So guess what? If it's south and east of 23 degrees, it's not 24. Is that difficult? It shouldn't be. Supposed experts cannot seem to execute simple basic cartography in this account. They are programmed into a box, ignoring that the Philippines even exist, which is the only way such could be overlooked. That is fraudulent and, frankly, racist. Let's go straight to the source on screen and in our associated blog. You'll find a link in the description box. Chapter 40 of Castanheda's work describes Lequios as a very rich land southeast of China, too far south to be the Ryukyus. Again, that part of China is Canton at 23 degrees. Luzon ends at 22 degrees to the southeast. Ryukyu is northeast of Canton at 24. And who exactly calls themselves a scholar and characterizes the tiny Ryukyu Islands as, what does he say here? Very large. Are they even reading these narratives? Can they? Or do they even try? How in 1883 did Castanheda know Pinto's 29-degree north coordinate was a forgery? Well, he most certainly did. This island wasn't just rich. It was full of people, order, porcelain, just like China. And it was, again, very large, fitting Luzon Island and never Ryukyu. And it was southeast, not northeast. Cartography that is directionally challenged on such basic points is just not credible. According to translator Rebecca Katz, and many others, by the way, it's not just her, but we will quote her, especially since she replaces Lequios with Ryukyu in utter fraud. We'll show you. Pinto himself wrote a letter to the Jesuits, in fact, from Malacca, not China, after his shipwreck. He described, and we've covered this in previous videos, the Lequios as being 250 leagues from China, or Malacca, and 100 leagues from Japan. This should be easy for a PhD to figure out, yet we find very few who have ever even looked at such. This places it firmly in Philippine territory, not Ryukyu, which is much further from Malaysia and much closer to China. No matter which way you configure it, it fails. Just like Barbossa's 175 leagues from the Malay Peninsula and Mendoza's equidistant midpoint between Java and Japan. This is idiot-proof for any scholar. Yet, the supposed traditional position is Ryukyu, which is also a lie, as that is the strange new doctrine. It is not the original position, which we have already covered in this series. But here's the kicker. Even translator Rebecca Katz admits the Jesuits later altered Pinto's letter. A dark pattern emerges, which is typical of an order that believes the ends justify the means, to the point where, in their own oath, they agree to even assassinate kings who will not allow their control. Did they? But not his journal. They accidentally left the 250 leagues in the letter, which is too far from Malacca and double the distance from China to Ryukyu, causing a conflict. Only Luzon fits. His altered journal, published decades after his death and admittedly altered by the Jesuits and their agents, claims Lequios Isles, where he was shipwrecked, was at 29 degrees north. But this is a problem. See, Pinto gave a massive amount of detail here, and none of it matches that coordinate. His letter doesn't match that coordinate either, and even the translators admit his original journal was altered before it was ever published, as we will cover in this video and the next as well. Yes, we will test the resources and other data in this account against this one data point in conflict with all of it, and you'll see for yourself. Let's not forget as well, Pinto was a Jesuit himself, at least temporarily, for a few years during this period, says Rebecca Katz and Cortesau, the translators. And supposedly, he even left the order with only speculation as to why, but not on good terms, it appears, which is why even plays attack Pinto, calling him a liar in the following era. Now, we didn't say that. The plays do, and the Jesuits do. The narrative is planted. Standard Jesuit propaganda, it seems. However, we do not believe Pinto's geography was wrong on this. The glaring point stands alone in the face of the rest of the data, as obviously they change. Either 29 degrees is a lie, an alteration, and fabrication, or the entire rest of the story is fiction, including his letter to the Jesuits. This is obvious for anyone who is willing to think. Again, we believe Pinto's original record did not include this conflict of 29 degrees, as no one could be that stupid. The original has disappeared, of course, and we only have the altered copies that were published. However, even with this, a simple test for those who can think proves Pinto's geography is actually fine. The duration in fraud is not, and it becomes very obvious. Why? Even translator Rebecca Katz admits the chaos. Dates and place names were confused, the text lacked chapter divisions, and the chronology was glaringly inaccurate. Her words, not ours. Did she also have the Dory disorder? This confusion made Pinto an easy target. But what if he was telling the truth all along? We believe he was, and the text was changed after his death, as the translators admit. The introduction notes Pinto's timeline is absurd, yet this one supposed inconsistency leads historians to doubt everything else he said. That doesn't make sense. Or better put, everything else standing behind only the 29 degrees, period, and forgetting the entire rest of the narrative. Let us not pretend that is academic reason. It is propaganda following the Jesuit-planted narrative. But let's be clear. Being off on dates doesn't equal being wrong about geography. Katz highlights the veracity of Pinto's work is still debated as absurd. She indeed says it should be not be, and then commits absolute fraud, changing Pinto's journal, fabricating Ryukyu in place of Lequios, which is not academic and not standard practice. A translator leaves the original translation as is and places footnotes to clarify. This is outright fraud, and she should be addressed. And that's critical. Critics and defenders both admit the ambiguity of the text, even deliberate or purposeful. Editor Francisco de Andrade made major changes. Did he also have the Dory disorder? Certainly, it is not academic to change the original text as Katz did, and he did. Seems like that's a general rule for the Jesuits with this historic text. Amazing that they got away with it for so long, but no longer. Again, with one corrects it in the footnotes, not changing the actual text unless they're applying fraud. This is unacceptable, and even more so for Katz, altering again in more profound fraud. She altered the altered text. Wow. He might have edited dates, chronology, even removed whole passages. Yet historians keep pointing to a single coordinate, 29 degrees north, as proof Pinto meant Ryukyu. That's not scholarship, it's stupid. None of them have ever tested this narrative in the slightest in order to say so. Darts in history do not go together, especially when they are aiming for the wrong board. Even what appears a bullseye is far off the mark. What if he didn't write such? Because of these inconsistencies, Pinto quickly gained a wild reputation as a liar. According to Katz and Cortazal, another translator, as well as many others, they're not the only two. In fact, his name became synonymous with exaggeration. That is a Jesuit ploy to discredit. Obviously, Pinto left their order and perhaps chose to tell the truth they did not want getting out, such as Luzon is Lequios, because that's what he says. By the resources, by his letter to the Jesuits, and by all of the facts put together, discounting the one point and only 1 point that is in conflict. See, the record of the location of the Lequios was already firmed up in the Spanish and Portuguese record, as we've covered, and Pinto would have known this. But is that fair, or is it just another case of scholars clinging to old paradigms that once again are not actually the original narrative, but the new strange doctrine? William Congreve in 1695 called Pinto a liar of the first magnitude. Wow! Again, we do not believe Pinto's account is a lie. It was altered, and the Jesuits who altered it are the liars. They are also the ones who planted the narrative that Pinto was a liar, in fact. Jesuits like João Rodrigues called his journal the Book of Counterfeits. Man. Even Roget's Thesaurus once used Pinto to mean deceiver. Whoa. Yet Cortesal's maps, used ineptly by him in his translation of Tome Paris Summa Oriental, which we'll mention throughout the series, I'm sure, and numerous historic clues lead us right back to the Philippines, not Ryukyu. That's right, if you actually read the maps he cites, they lead to Lequios in the Philippines. And while Cortesal lies about that being Ryukyu, you can't draw that conclusion other than you're just changing the text in witchcraft. He even notes Lequios on one particular map between 17 and 20 degrees. Then, in witchcraft, he corrects the royal Spanish cartographer as actually meaning 24 degrees in witchcraft. How stupid. Did he also have the Dory disorder? So who's really misled here? Even though translators admit Pinto's coordinates, distances, and details are inconsistent, they continue to treat the 29-degree landing point as fact, when it just simply cannot be. They do not bother to test it against the rest of this story, and we will, and they will quote his letter to the Jesuits, as Katz does, also in conflict, but then ignore it in illiterate poise. That is not academic. These are not scholars on this topic. They are propagandists. But what if that detail was the only thing changed to force fit the colonial narrative? What if Lequios never meant Ryukyu but always meant Batanes, Luzon? We don't believe Pinto was a liar. Katz even mentions the Jesuits were accused of having persecuted the author, Pinto, and emasculated the manuscript out of spite for Pinto's having left their order. Wow. We believe his truth was edited. This is easy to find in Part 2. We'll explore more contradictions, lost truths, and modern historians' blind spots in finding Pinto. We will locate his shipwreck account. It has been there on maps for centuries. Wait till you see this. And once again, missed because those reading the maps forget Pinto's true paradigm and even his account completely. Because maybe, just maybe, finding Pinto is the key to finding the truth, hidden in plain sight. Tell us what you think. Don't forget to like, subscribe, be sure to hit the bell, and comment so you don't miss the next leg of this epic journey into the history they tried to rewrite, but they are caught. And perhaps if you really wish to be notified, a task clearly too advanced for the likes of YouTube, go to thegodculture.org and click the subscribe box at the bottom, and we will execute what YouTube seems incapable. We will notify you ourselves. But one cannot expect that YouTube actually functions on a basic level, of course. But we will stand regardless. Links in the description box. Thanks for watching. Yah bless to everyone. In the beginning, a garden was planted, enclosed within the earth, in the east, the Orient, far east, says Enoch before the flood, and Noah, who lived there and mapped it in the Philippines. The Bible has always led there, and even Bible historians knew how to read the Hebrew, such as Josephus in 90 AD, Lactantius and African in 310, and in 550, Cosmos, the Greek monk and merchant traveler who went to the Indies, wrote in Alexandria, Egypt, Africa, Christian topography, and he mapped paradise as the Philippines. That map was even published in the Greek edition of the Bible at one time. A 6,000-year track record, forgotten today by illiterate scholars. They have no education on this topic. Let us explore this massive trove of ancient maps. Israel is not east, and a spring is a spring, not a river, and must be fed by a mega river as its source, and must connect to 3 other heads as well, all rivers, and actually salt water even. Can they read? Africa is not east, nor in Shem's far east, where the garden has always resided. Mesopotamia is the occult creation myth of the Nephilim. Nice, scholars. Modern rivers from rain did not even exist before the flood, and the Bible never uses the word Tigris ever in the original Hebrew. Why do modern scholars have no clue when the evidence is so vast? The Garden of Eden revealed, resolving the 6,000-year testimony, marking the Far East. Now available in print only, no ebook, on Amazon and Shopee Philippines. Over 75 high-resolution color historic maps with accurate interpretation no one can truly dispute. Get your book now, and a new series begins.